So I know I promised Gears of War stuff this Tatas Tuesday, but the game is just coming out today, and it's going to involve some spoilers, so I wanted to give people a chance to play the game before I dove into that. And then this happened over the weekend.
I'm going to fix it because I agree with you.
In a moment made for Saturday Night Live parody, Donald Trump loomed behind Hillary Clinton at the debate. The CNN body language people tried to claim that she walked into his shot. But no, take a look at it again. He deliberately steps in behind her. Watch it. Here we go. She's talking. In he comes. He walked into her spot instead of like anybody who done actual debate prep. Sit at your chair so this doesn't happen. This is going to go down in the history books as what not to do in a presidential town hall debate. And it's almost a moment that encapsulated all the yuck that has gone on in the last, what is it now? 96 hours surrounding this election. And it would be really easy to add to that negativity. But I was thinking about this, and there are a lot of real positives that came out of Trump acting like a spoiled brat again and getting dirty and nasty and bringing in Bill Clinton's old infidelities and, bad behavior in proven and unproven ways, and somehow trying to directly connect Hillary to that, because Bill is not the candidate, Hillary is. But despite himself, Trump has forced people to talk about some things, and we're finally getting the national conversation and national agreement on, I should say international, because this is being discussed around the world now, that we couldn't get through other means. Sometimes stuff has to shock us out of our complacency to make it happen. What do I mean by that? Well, I've made a list of things that this sort of made abundantly clear. And I'm not just talking about the debate. I'm talking about the WikiLeaks stuff, the antics with, the 4 women before the debate, the various things, the tape, of course, the tape. People said in the comments of previous videos that they expected me to talk about the tape. So this is me talking about the tape, but I'm going to be positive about it. Because I'm actually, when I sat down to think about it, there's a lengthy list of stuff that is actually really positive discussions that have come out of this. And one of the major things was the fact that athletes stood up to locker room talk via Twitter. And every time we're all sick of Twitter, something like this happens and makes you realize, Twitter actually does have a valid purpose. It just only happens 1 out of 10 times, so to speak. But I made a comment I got a lot of grief for about us needing to have a discussion about why, Trump, well, I don't remember the exact wording of it. I was working under character limits, but how things like locker rooms and golf courses as all-male spaces, as Trump, presented them as, enable his bad behavior. Why does he think that boasting about, sexually assaulting a woman is just locker room talk? Why is he allowed to say these things without people just going, nope, like big nope, nope burger, no-licious, nah-uh? And that's exactly what professional athletes did. Okay, some of these athletes aren't the most reliable sources, but those are the exceptions that prove the rule. The real athletes who weren't football kickers took back Trump's attempt to define masculinity as something that's, a convenient excuse for completely aberrant behavior on his part. And this is exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for people to either go, well, yes, this does happen in locker rooms and we have to be more, we have to be more aware of this, that it does cause harm if anybody finds out, and people do find out in this age of super extra connectivity. Or, you know, these athletes said this never happened in any locker room I was in, and that's what I expected, but I wasn't sure because I'm female, right? And the thing that I hope guys understand out of all of this, and I haven't heard anybody quite put it this way, but the things that Donald Trump and Billy Bush were doing in a not at all private setting, when you're on a bus driving up to the beginning of a shot, that is pre-roll. You know the camera's rolling. You know not just that your mic is on, but you are being recorded. That is not a private conversation. But you know, the fact that they spoke the way they did, that is the kind of talk that a great many women, I won't say all because I can't say that for certain, but I know I certainly hope my male friends don't speak that way about me or any other woman, but there's always this fear that they do. And there have been numerous guys who have claimed completely falsely that they've slept with me or could have slept with me. And I get really annoyed by this because I'm married and that matters to me. And, you know, these guys, they clearly don't know me very well because, you know, there are some really good looking girls out there too if I weren't married. And strangely enough, you know, I don't hear women claiming they've slept with me. It would be equally false since I got married, but it's always men. It's always men. And why? It's bullshit. No one's impressed by bullshit. People think you're a loser. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of guys about this, and guys know. Guys know when a guy like Trump is BSing. But there was a specificity to his Nancy O'Dell story. And poor Nancy O'Dell now has to respond to this. And she didn't do anything but do furniture shopping with the guy. But, oh God, now she's associated forever with Donald Trump saying he can grab women in the vagina. Not the word he used. I'm trying to keep this clean. But I'm glad that a lot of men stood up and said, no, this does not happen. This does not normalize, that we are not going to participate in the normalization of this behavior. And this is very important, that this sort of predatory attitude is not normalized, because decent guys shouldn't be looked at with distrust because of the terrible behavior of a minority of men, of which, you know, Donald Trump numbers among. The next thing I thought is very positive is that girls now have a role model who stayed strong even though she's made mistakes, even though she's wrong a lot, even though she's been caught not just making mistakes but being dishonest to an extent, and got caught in some very unfortunate situations, partially because of her own behavior, but a lot of this is because of what her husband did. And so she had to get up there and see the faces of three women that her husband most likely had consensual affairs with, but possibly, touched them in unconsensual ways or exposed himself to them in unconsensual ways. And God, that's awful. That's awful. I mean, it's never happened to me, thank goodness. I don't think I could stay with someone in that regard, but I don't have the same beliefs about marriage. I think marriage is something you stick out as much as you can, but there's a breaking point, and that would be way past it for me. But I respect her for sticking to it. I respect her for being exceptionally loyal. One of the things that has been a defining characteristic for Hillary Clinton throughout all of this is that she has stuck by a lot of people who have made horrendous mistakes that have had ongoing repercussions for her. But, you know, I respect that. And unfortunately, the side effect of this is Clinton right now is being tried in the court of public opinion without even a preponderance of evidence baseline for Trump and his attack dogs to prove their case. You know, this isn't the vast right-wing conspiracy territory, but it's certainly a gang-up, isn't it? And Clinton surrogates have done a terrible job of countering the attacks, except for people like Sally Kohn and Van Jones and Angela Rye. And the funny thing about those three is Van Jones isn't a surrogate. Okay, Van Jones is just a commentator, and he's always been. The reason Van Jones has credibility is you don't know what he's going to say. You don't know if he's going to agree with the Democratic Party on an issue. You don't know if he's going to agree with the candidate on the issue. He speaks his mind. And that doesn't mean he's always right, but he speaks his mind. He's not towing a party line. Sally Kohn was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and Angela Rye wrote this really great piece about how she wasn't really excited about Hillary Clinton until the first debate, and then she got it. So Clinton's most effective counters to what's been going on right now are not her long-term backers. I mean, Hillary Rosen and Patty Solis Doyle and all of them, they're trying. They clearly support Hillary, but they are from an older generation who does not understand that millennials are okay with, you know, when they go low, you spit on their head, right? I love the idea of if they go low, we go high. That's great, but there are some times where the reality in this social media driven world that while you're up there, give them a good swift kick in the head so they don't come back at you again, right? This is the generation gap here. And this is difficult because older people vote. So the actions that are going to encourage older people who are more likely to vote for Hillary Clinton already are going to alienate the young voters who she's struggling with. So it's a real balancing act, but no matter how you look at it, Hillary Clinton is being blamed for her husband's alleged bad behavior and some proven bad behavior based on a whole lot of assumptions. The theories. If you're going to believe that she was somehow or an enabler or a bully of women who aggressively attacked women who were victims and she knew were victims, you have to believe that her husband was running around molesting women and she knowingly threatened to keep these women quiet. And you know what makes a lot more sense? As a woman who's been married, as an individual who's been married for 17 years, it makes more sense that she didn't know what he was doing because he lied to her. And if she went after these women, and in one case, you know, Juanita Broderick claims that shaking her hand and thanking her for her support was a threat. No, that is what she's claiming was a threat. But, you know, Paula Jones, she did attack. She did attack Paula Jones in the press. She did attack Jennifer Flower. She said some nasty things about them. But that was where I come from. That's mild compared to what women do to the women that enabled cheating from their men. It gets real. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's human. I don't think that those, you know, failed showgirl or whatever the heck she called Jennifer Glavas, I don't think that comment was anything other than something she was allowed to say, but she really meant it because she was really angry at everyone at that point. But, you know, you have to keep in mind, again, it's this sense of misplaced trust with Hillary Clinton, right? She trusted her husband. He turned out not to be deserving of that trust, but she had a kid. And like it or not, the ability to afford her child's college was contingent on the financial success of her husband, because unfortunately when you get high enough up in politics, you become a single income household. So many of these first lady positions are honorary ones, and there are expectations that you fill this domestic role. You give up a lot to support a spouse. And I mean, now it's Bill's turn. He's going to have to give up his foundation work so that Hillary can be president. But, you know, Trump did this before this. Trump did this once before with Huma Abedin. He tried to claim that because of Anthony Weiner's bad behavior, Anthony Weiner was her husband, the sexting guy, he claimed that Anthony Weiner had possible access to classified information, and Huma Abedin was careless and terrible, and Hillary Clinton was careless and terrible for letting Anthony Weiner potentially enter classified information. None of this was backed up by a shred of evidence. Not a bit. But it's spread. And I think that both Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin have shown exceptional composure in the face of this unfairness, and that deserves praise. And you may not be at the point in your life yet where you understand why this deserves praise, but I hope you remember now me telling you, if you don't get it now, someday you will. Someday you will realize that sometimes the hardest, bravest thing to do is just keep your mouth shut and smile as best you can. And this goes for men as well as women. I'm not getting into this smile more thing. Trust me, as a performer of way too many years, God, it's more than 30 years now, it's harder to pretend to be happy and cool when you're sad or angry than it is to act sad or angry when you're in a good mood. It is way easier to come down than to go up. And I have a ton of respect for these women in that regard, because Hillary's in a tough spot. No one wants a victim as president. So in order for Hillary to get what she wants, which is to be president, and these ambitions have already been mocked on Saturday Night Live to begin with, she's got to suck up her own hurts and, you know, stick as much as she can to the high ground. Well, Russian hackers are trying to get a hold of her emails, right-wing operatives are trying to smear her, and most of the press wants to win a Pulitzer Prize for cattiness the way Maureen Dowd did during the Clinton-Lewinsky scandals in the 1990s. Most people don't remember that anymore. But Maureen Dowd's writing, much like Bill Clinton's behavior during that time, would have been seen as totally inappropriate today. She slut-shamed and fat-shamed Monica Lewinsky. But the entire press corps right now is too busy falling over itself to avoid responsibility for pushing Monica Lewinsky to a mental breakdown for anybody to hold Maureen down accountable for what she wrote and did at that point. Some people at, is it Salon, have tried. There's been a few articles, they're kind of buried. They were written a while back. But Slate, it was Slate. And I thought this was, you know, they pointed out Maureen Dowd won a Pulitzer Prize for op-ed writing where she called, Monica Lewinsky a, you know, predatory bimbo. And I think we really have to examine whether or not this has contributed to the sorry state of op-ed writing in all forms of media. Now, like, forget the internet. This is the New York freaking Times. I cannot stand when Maureen Dowd writes fiction as a column. It is flat out fiction, and there is not a single thing saying the scenario is hypothetical. She's created entire conversations. I read one between Hillary Clinton, Dick Cheney, and I forget who else, but they never happened. They were a figment of Maureen Dowd's imagination, and this is listed under opinion writing, and it is fiction. Drives me crazy. Complete misuse of that platform. But this is also a good reminder. The press often gets things wrong. In this particular instance, they have a bad habit for picking the wrong victim in these cases. Back in the 1990s, they tried to make Bill Clinton, you know, the guy who was married, aware, and in a position of power, he was made out to be the victim of a vast right-wing conspiracy and this conniving, insane slut. That being, you know, poor Monica Lewinsky, who was screwed over by pretty much everyone, literally and figuratively. I remember the tabloids at that point. I was just becoming old enough to mostly understand what was going on, but I remember these tabloid photos. They were obviously doctored, of Hillary beating up Bill. Like, I mean, she was like throwing things at him or something, or hit him. There was a story that she hit him. And it was, oh, poor Bill, surrounded by these bitchy women who don't realize how lucky they were to breathe the same air as him. That was the attitude at the time. And I remember at the time thinking, this is wrong. I did not like what he did, but like many other people, I liked less the seeming two wrongs make a right approach of the Republicans going after him for basically having a mistress and bringing their mistresses to the impeachment hearing. These people who are complaining now that Bill Clinton was never punished for what he did. He was, subjected to impeachment. His law license was suspended. There were consequences for what he did. And it wasn't just the Lewinsky thing. It was a sum total. He got caught lying, not about Monica Lewinsky, but about Paula Jones. Well, he lied in a deposition in the Paula Jones trial about Lewinsky. And that caused all the dominoes to fall. He paid for that. And, now it's not a question of he got away with it, no one cared. People cared very much. But proportional justice and rehabilitation is a big part of our justice system as well. And I'm not talking criminal justice system. I'm just talking the overall concept of fairness. That if someone is beaten into the ground, whether or not they see jail or not, except in the Juanita Broderick case, no one is accusing him of violence. And the Juanita Broderick case, the statute of limitations would have been way over by now. There comes a point in time where the desire to punish must give way to the desire to rehabilitate, and this is just not happening here. Now, in 2016, the media's decided for some reason that Juanita Broderick is the correct victim. And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've been watching what's going on a lot, and I think they're wrong. You're victim blaming. How can you say that? How? We're supposed to believe victims. I know there's no such thing as a perfect victim. Far from it. I do not believe, I do not believe in shredding someone's sexual history or anything like that, what they did after the fact. But credibility does matter. The ability of the person who's making the accusation to recognize and tell the truth matters very much in these cases where credibility is really what it comes down to. And Juanita Broderick's account seems to depend on how you ask the question and how many cameras are rolling. She signed an affidavit saying Bill Clinton didn't assault her, then told Dateline that he did. She told one reporter that she hoped Hillary Clinton didn't know what happened, and then she told another one that Hillary Clinton knowingly tried to shut her up with a handshake and a thank you. But the thing that really, okay, this is no longer consistent for me, is that she retweeted birther conspiracy nonsense. And any rational person at this point realizes birther stuff is garbage. So we can only conclude that the Clintons, to be fair, have a complex relationship to the truth. That's a euphemism for they don't always tell it. But so does Juanita Broderick. And okay, it's politically correct to take her word for something that happened in the 1970s. And in this case, it's getting Trump off the hook for something that happened 10 years ago. But all the sob stories in the world told to how many cameras in the world don't change the fact that Kenneth Starr, who was a special prosecutor who led the investigation into Clinton's inability to keep it in his pants, found Juanita Broderick's account inconclusive. And this was at a time when he took Paula Jones's word. And Paula Jones couldn't accurately describe the penis Bill Clinton allegedly exposed to her. And so, I'm not saying, I want to be clear here. I'm not saying that nothing happened. Absolutely not. I think the truth is somewhere in between. And all I'm saying is that none of these cases have, a smoking gun or, a semen-stained dress. That was the thing that basically, Lewinsky could prove her case because she had that dress. And that's how we know she was telling the truth about what mattered. And she got destroyed by the media. And now, instead of making the point that something may very well have happened to Juanita Broaddrick, but Juanita Broaddrick's account also makes completely unproven assumptions about the wife of the man who allegedly wronged her. Instead of pointing that out, that we don't have to discount all of what she's saying to point out that, all right, there is some level of substantiation for the actual alleged assault, but you cannot say with any certainty that a handshake and a thank you was a hush-up, because it sure didn't work, did it? No money changed hands. There was no follow-up. She never heard from Hillary Clinton again. It was a smile and a thank you and a handshake the next day that was probably just a smile and a handshake the next day because Hillary probably didn't know. What do you think? Bill came home, hey, honey, how you doing? I raped this lady last night. You want to help me cover it up? That's crazy. Like, to go that route is almost as ludicrous as believing that Barack Obama was secretly born in Kenya. But Juanita Broaddrick believes that too. Okay? The primary wronged party, and this is the thing that everyone has forgotten. First of all, the media tends to decide there can only be one wronged party at any given time, and that's just not so. Infidelity hurts a ton of people around the person who is unfaithful. And the primary wrong party when a spouse is unfaithful is their partner and any children. And in these cases, Bill Clinton's infidelity is the only thing that's been proven. But that didn't, and this is where I'm getting to. You're probably all mad at me because I'm not listening and believing Juanita Broaddrick, but Bill Clinton's infidelity is the only thing that's been proven. But the media narrative here is so strong that Trump surrogates went on CNN and called Bill Clinton an abuser. They actually dropped the word rape. And no one on that network pointed out that this has not been proven in court. People get allegedlys for murder. People can be caught on, tape with things. And you have to say allegedly before they're convicted of something. But it has gone out the window. Journalistic neutrality has gone right out the window on this one because the media has just decided on their narrative in this. And that's what bugs me. Not what I think happened in 1978. Because that's certainly the most, it's funny because we see it as the most credible one now. But in 1999, it was considered not credible enough for her to testify. It was too inconclusive. And Paula Jones's story, who, at the time was seen to be not just not believed, but discredited. When a guy flashes his wang at you and you describe details that weren't there, you describe deformities that weren't there, that's a bit odd, to say the least, right? And yes, memory is a funny thing, but there's only so much listen believing you can expect people whose jobs it is to ask the tough questions can do. And this is the next thing. This is the thing I am thrilled about, is that the weaknesses of this whole listen and believe nonsense are becoming, and I talked about this yesterday on another tangent, but we're finally seeing the nonsense here. A lot of you listening have probably listened and believed that Hillary Clinton is inherently and uniquely dishonest, right? That's okay. A lot of people have. And has Hillary Clinton said false things? For the record, yes, absolutely. She has lied about things. The biggest lie was that sniper fire thing. I don't know what was going on with her brain on that one, why she would say something like that. But like I said, she has a complex relationship with the truth. But there are very few people in the real world that haven't lied at some point. The thing is, for most people, well, many people anyway, I don't know about most people, but for most people, lying isn't a defining character point. The issue with Hillary Clinton is instead of examining the preponderance of evidence regarding her truthfulness, a lot of people have just listened and believed the Trump campaign and other Republican operatives, and they have their own tendencies to tell, let's say, tall tales. You may want to call it lies. And I've done a lot of reading and a lot of watching on this because I knew I was going to get screamed at during this entire campaign because you're a feminist. You must be a Hillary Clinton supporter. She should be in jail. She's a liar. So I did a lot of research on this as a defense against this. And it happened. I got accused of a lot of things. But the most likely explanation that I've been able to determine is that she's secretive. Yes. She's too gullible still. And she trusts the wrong people. Exhibit A, that idiot IT guy who gave the bleach bit treatment over 30,000 emails to cover up his own incompetence. And then her lawyers who did a crappy job of sorting her emails. Guys, trust me, people in these positions don't do any of that themselves. So this idea Hillary Clinton bleached, I've heard, middle-aged ladies at parties going, Hillary Clinton poured bleach on her emails. No. But this is how the broken telephone works. She did nothing personally. She relied on the people around her to handle it, and they made a hash of it. And now, the supervisor always in charge. The leader is always ultimately responsible for that. So I give her, textbook manager cred for, standing by her people and taking, it's me, I'm in charge. But holy crap, Hillary, you're paying these people probably very well to provide way better service than this. Then again, a woman who doesn't expect better from her own husband, it really makes you wonder how much of her stated bad judgment links back to that. Because what is her sense of trust? What is her sense of commitment? What did that do to that? I don't know, right? No matter how you look at it, the scenario I just presented that, she's gullible and secretive, but, not deliberately misleading people and she trusts the wrong people, that's far more plausible than the popular media narrative, which is this grand conspiracy involving the president, the vice president, the first lady, the former secretary of state, the attorney general, and an FBI director with open contempt for Hillary Clinton. That's what it would have to take for the Trump version and the Fox News version and even the CNN version, and MSNBC even does it sometimes because liberals hate Clinton too. This is the thing you guys have to realize. The liberals hated Clinton when they were out of office because, super predator and all that stuff. Sorry, when they were in office, the liberals hated them because they weren't liberal enough. And the conservatives hated them because they were effective. But too many people, because of political affiliations, because of echo chambers, have listened and believed this conspiracy. And listen and believe is not a legal principle for a reason. I was very impressed by CNN anchor Erin Burnett, who has a friend who told her, confided in her, that Donald Trump forced a kiss on her. The whole Tic Tacs thing apparently triggered her into, oh my God, it was exactly the same, right? But she won't reveal her friend's identity. Her friend doesn't want to come forward. She can talk about it, but she doesn't want to reveal that source. And under an uncomfortably aggressive badgering by Trump yes-man Corey Lewandowski, Erin Burnett just said, I'm putting my credibility on the line here. Believe me, don't believe me, I'm telling you what happened. Because he was trying to push her to reveal the name and all the details. Because you know why, right? So they can Lewinsky her, so they can attack dog her, so they can tear apart this accuser's life. There's a playbook for this crap, right? But, Burnett, what Erin Burnett did is she's invoking her own personal integrity, not a demand that we believe accusations unquestioningly. And I think part of it is that Erin Burnett recognizes a lot of the double standards inherent in this discussion. And that's my next point. This whole Trump-Clinton thing is really calling attention to some double standards regarding men and women in the public sphere. Notice I said in the public sphere in politics, not all. We're going to spotlight this particular issue. Basically, if Donald Trump were a woman and behaved the way he did, he'd be branded a hysterical slut, which is what they did to Monica Lewinsky, right? When she came after Clinton. But Trump has 3 marriages, at least 1 infidelity, and by his own admission, he's pursued other married women. And that's a portrait of promiscuity with no regard for other people's boundaries. But Trump's, let's face it, abusive language, his name calling, his nonsense, his potty mouth, that's considered tough. Said tough things to her. You hear that all the time. Tough. You hear it echoed by his kids. You probably would hear it from his wife. She said some things, but I think everything she said in public has been written by someone else. So I kind of feel bad for Melania. She's got to be humiliated right now on so many counts. And I think that probably somebody who understands more than anybody how Melania feels right now is Hillary Clinton. But, whenever Clinton gives any, tough language back, Trump brands that as nasty. She said nasty things to me. It was nasty. It was terrible, horrible. But he's tough. She's nasty. He's tough. And of course, the media, the various anchors and things like that, not the surrogates. The surrogates are the surrogates, but the anchors. Guys with reputations like Jake Tapper. Guys like Anderson Cooper. Guys like Wolf Blitzer. Blitzer's done it. Yeah, Blitzer's done it. He's just echoed that double standard. But they just repeat it. And they leave it to the pundits, the panels, to contextualize any of this stuff. And the problem with that is that the Trump surrogates can just talk over anything they try to say. Jake Tapper, I remember because he does the fact check stuff. He does the fact check stuff for CNN, but he turns it on and off. So he's guilty of really shaping a narrative to an unhealthy degree because people see him as the fact check guy. So they believe he's going to call BS when he sees, and some of the times he does. But he's got his own blinders. You see these contempt expressions on him when he's talking about various people. He's not as good at keeping sort of the neutral face on as some of the others, and he's rewarded for that. And I think he's done some very good work, but his contempt for this situation has made him a useful idiot of a sort here. Not a useful idiot is look it up. I'm not calling him an idiot. It's a particular phrase. And for the record, I'm almost convinced that Trump surrogates have been coached to interrupt and shout down any inconvenient facts. And it's a very effective tactic. The networks should just be stopping them, and they should have stopped them a long time ago. It should have been, Jeffrey Lord, you can come in and you can say the Democratic Party is racist all you want. Just keep saying that. Keep looking Van Jones right in the face, laughing in his face and saying he's racist. But you can't interrupt. It's not your opinions, but you can't interrupt. If you keep interrupting, you can't come back. Because it's just bad television as well as bad news when it's the talking over. And Anderson Cooper is the only one who is consistent on that. He's actually had times like, hey guys, shut up, because he gets so frustrated at it. And he apologizes for that, but I give him credit for that. And if you're not convinced that the Trump and his surrogates have been lying through their teeth to a far greater degree than Clinton and her surrogates have, don't take my word for it, please. I am not trying to force my opinion on anybody. I am just presenting the facts as I understand them. Check PolitiFact, or the New York Times, or CNN, or the Washington Post. Check all. Oh, right. The Trump surrogates just complained that all of those outlets are secret wings of the Clinton campaign, even though all of those outlets, notably the New York Times and the Washington Post, have run far flimsier stories on Hillary Clinton without evidence, without solid evidence. They don't need evidence. They need it raises important questions. is the current baseline for journalism because everything's so fast and you can win a Pulitzer Prize for being catty. But this is where I come to the very interesting thing, and I know this is quite a long video, but there's a lot to talk about here. This is where we come to a really interesting part, and I'm like, whoa? First couple times I heard this, I'm like, oh, I was angry. But then I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Republican operatives are claiming they want real feminism. I have not been able to believe the people that I have seen this phony feminist talking point coming out of. And they've been labeling Hillary Clinton a phony feminist. And the assertion that there's a phony feminism implies the existence of a form of real, relevant, and legitimate feminism. And coming from, conservatives, I'm talking people like, Mike Pence, certainly, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio have disappeared, but I'm talking this tier of guy. This people who don't have anything but, or I thought had nothing but contempt for the work of second-rate feminism since they keep trying to overturn Roe versus Wade. But the Republican talking point that Hillary Clinton is a phony feminist that attacks women, this is cause for rejoicing. The Republicans have finally come around to the idea that some feminism is good. Hallelujah. I mean, okay, still, their responses to the whole, Trump hot mic tape have been full of benevolent sexism. They've still got some learning to do because you see words like women should be revered and cherished, and that's benevolently sexist. You don't revere a woman, you respect a woman. You'll never catch a woman in the same situation saying that the men in their lives should be revered, right? That just, oh, you can't stand up for yourself. You're controlled. Like, no, cut that nonsense out. And the reason I'm so excited about this sort of, the intentions are absolutely slimy, but it's out there now. They can't walk it back. They're on the record saying phony feminism, which means they support real feminism. The importance of this and things like this is it further marginalizes this mass of types that, people are calling the deplorables now after the whole basket of deplorables. And I want to say off the bat, while bridge building is extremely important, nobody can please everyone. That's what the mute button's for, and the block button. There are some people out there who are legitimately racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, all this stuff in hostile ways. And while Twitter's alt-right gas bags have been attempting to shout down and send nasty grams to anybody treating critically about the Trump tape, practically the rest of the world was in agreement that what Trump had said was absolutely, well, the only world is deplorable. It's so rare to get that kind of agreement on communications that people find offensive. There's usually far more people who claim they weren't offended. You're not hearing it wasn't offensive. I didn't bother. It didn't bother me. I wasn't offended. It's categorical. No, I do not support what he said. What he said was disgusting, but he's apologized and I've forgiven him. That's the talking point for his defenders. And what's good about this is that the reality is that racism, sexism, and other hatreds in individuals, they only really matter if those individuals have power. And these Twitter fools and these ruiners of YouTube comment sections, they only have the power to be annoying. So the more this stuff happens, the more people have this sort of generally agreed upon, no, there are some things you just don't say, then the less that the screaming and the dirty words and the trolling and the so-called harassment, the less that'll matter. We can mute them with a couple of clicks, but they can't mute the progress the rest of us agree on. And the flip side of that is that the hypocrisy of so-called Christian conservative political leaders, we're seeing the complete hypocrisy regarding that, right? I mean, they'll persist on giving gay people a hard time when they want to get married and denying a woman's right to control her own body, or at least trying to. But, a guy boasts about trying to hit on a married woman, you're going after her like a bitch, He said, "Oh, that he's forgiven. He's forgiven." And they're in the same passage of the Bible, guys. Like the prohibition against coveting your neighbor's wife is right near the be fruitful and multiply, and oh no, that's in Genesis. The thing about murder or killing that they use against in the whole abortion bait, the reason they claim they're pro-life, it's in the same portion of the book. Like the Mormons, leaders like Mitt Romney, who's a Mormon elder, they have much more consistently maintained the moral high ground. And this is good because any person who just picks and chooses their ethics should not be considered a leader in these debates. And so I'm glad that we've separated people like Mitt Romney, who has some ideas I definitely don't agree with. People like that, and people like Jeb Bush, who everybody says is boring, but, wouldn't you love to have boring now? And, people like that, I don't know even what Jeb Bush's religion is. I know Romney. But I know people who are intensely Christian. They work in churches. And they don't condemn people the way these political figures do. So I would be very happy if we could get away from religious extremism of all kinds. That would make me very happy, because that's a discussion for another day, but I was happy about that too. But the other thing that happened, 2 more points. Trump showed just how false his complaints about the media are. The people who saw debate, that moment where just a few minutes after Martha Raddatz had asked Hillary Clinton a question about one of her scandals, Trump started grumbling that they hadn't asked any questions that were critical on Clinton. And, 3-on-1, nice. You don't even have to fact check this, because it was right there. It was right there. And that just showed that his accusations of media bias in favor of Clinton are patently and glaringly false. The reality is that Trump's rise has been aided by earned media. I hate that term. It's basically free media you get because you're a gong show, right? The media has chased rumors about both candidates, not waited for evidence before running with the accusations about both candidates. But Trump has a different gong show every other day, and so he's gotten more time. And the results of all this chasing rumors have actually been pretty enlightening, because, things like the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Foundation turns out is actually pretty well run. And Hillary Clinton's email leaks with John Podesta's and everybody around Hillary Clinton, so far nothing has come out of Hillary Clinton's other than freedom of information. There's run-of-the-mill political grossness, but what you don't see in the Clinton team's emails is that juvenile stuff you saw with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all that stuff in the DNC stuff. There's a level of professionalism in these emails that it's just run-of-the-mill political grossness. It's nothing I consider inappropriate. And to be completely honest, the leaked speech excerpts weren't nearly as bad as I imagined. I was expecting far worse, because it's true. They're getting on her for a politician having a public and private position. They all do that. I have interviewed politicians. I have talked to them on or off air. They all have their public personas and their private opinions because they have platforms they have to drive. And I don't know why this isn't the answer. I don't know why she didn't answer this way. When you become the party's nominee, you agree to promote the party platform, which in this case was a negotiation between the Clinton camp and the Sanders camp. So yes, there's a ton of stuff she's backing in public and will go through. It's stuff she can live with, but if she had her druthers, she wouldn't do it this way. Do I believe that in a perfect world she'd have single-payer healthcare? Absolutely. Do I believe that, she'd have freer trade and more immigration? Absolutely. Open borders? No, nobody's gonna advocate for true open borders. Apparently that was about environmental stuff. But yeah, she's not gonna say so because she got thumped in the 90s doing it. And this is what politicians do. This is why more people don't go into politics. Okay? But flip that around and look at the Trump scandals. There's been fire behind that smoke. The one that was nothing was the Melania Trump immigration issue, and I still find that disgusting. I still find that big to-do about the photos she took gross. Like, those were unfair. They were picking on the spouse. And, you know, Hillary Clinton is not responsible for what Bill Clinton does, and what Melania Trump did as a model is not relevant to Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Okay? But Trump's charity did have improper paperwork. He does have business ties to Russia, according to his son. And, you know, the fact that he ran a beauty pageant in Russia, he hasn't paid federal income tax, by his own admission, in nearly 2 decades. His private comments have been horrendous. His past public comments have been horrendous. And the only reason we know this is because of the Howard Stern show. And I hope people are still listening here, because this has been a long one. And I try to keep these to a half hour, but this one I just couldn't, because there was too much to go through. But the thing that I'm happy to see is the legitimization, finally, of Howard Stern. I'm a Howard Stern fan. And a lot of people go, what? How can you be? You're a feminist. Well, that's what I'm going to talk about here. I'll admit, I do not like a lot of the things that Howard Stern did, especially when he was on terrestrial radio. The rating women, the paying for breast implants, all that stuff. He frequently went into the gutter. Like I said, I'm saying this as a fan of his. As an entertainer, Howard Stern consistently channeled a brutally frank look at humanity. He'd belch on air. He had a character named Fart Man. It was the good and the bad. And Stern, especially in the old days before he married his current wife, he could be a real pig. He still can be a real pig in a self-deprecating way. But here's the thing about Stern. Every guest on his show has the choice whether to go there with him or not. His longtime news anchor, Robin Quivers, she very rarely participates in the more sophomoric stuff. She kind of laughs, and there's a Robin laugh when she really finds something funny, and then there's a Robin laugh when she's like, you're all idiots. And to me, that's a big sign, the fact that Robin has been there so long, and she's clearly not on the same page with that stuff. It shows that Howard understands boundaries. There are right places and right times for sexualized comments. I heard when they were doing all these, they were running all these signs, these songs that were like filthy about Robin. They played one and Robin went, okay, no more of that. And they stopped. They understand boundaries. And the thing about Stern is he understands there's right places and right times for sexualized comments, even expressing certain thoughts that are generally considered to be wrong. There's a time and a place for that, mostly on his radio show. But it's important to note that Stern says what he says with women in the room. He doesn't call it locker room. He doesn't limit these comments. He doesn't say one thing when women aren't around and then something else when they are around. That's the thing that drove me, that, hi, when Trump gets off when there's a woman right in front of him, he goes from all big talker to, oh, hello. It's totally phony. Totally phony. Stern says it. He's the same way with, he's the same way every morning. Every single day, he's the same. And that means he's prepared to be challenged on some of his more vulgar statements, and he's willing to be judged in the court of public opinion. The interesting thing is, of late, he's developed a reputation for being an excellent interviewer. And the funny thing is, on a technical level, this just isn't true. And I say this as somebody who also has this habit, so I'm super aware of it, he very frequently interrupts his guests. Sometimes he even answers questions for them. He goes too far into the weeds on certain topics. But what he's good at, he's an exceptionally authentic and engaged interviewer. And this overcomes his structural weaknesses. Nobody's a perfect interviewer. The great thing about a Howard Stern interview is that guests are given a very real opportunity to get a positive result. Grown-ups look more like grown-ups. And if somebody's a mean person instead of just being goofy, it shows, precisely because Howard Stern really isn't looking to ambush anybody. He'll ask some dirty questions, but people can decline to answer. And, it's sort of a given that, if they decline to answer, they decline to answer. Nobody can be forced to say something they don't want to talk about. And the cool thing about that is guests are given a very real opportunity to get a positive result. So, I think I already said that, but there's a reason this guy has 2 whole channels devoted to his content on satellite radio, because authenticity overcomes any other failings. Like I said, I don't want to be, I don't want to sound like I'm dogging on Stern or I'm hating on Stern. Every media personality has weaknesses as well as strengths. I've been accused of a lot of things lately, and so I'm trying to be extra careful to go pro and cons. Cut that crap out because I'm tired of it. Trump is different than Stern. 2 guys say filthy things. The difference with Trump is he minimizes his strengths by running from his weaknesses, where Stern embraces his freaking weaknesses. If Trump offends, he either claims he didn't say it or makes some kind of excuse. But Trump is constantly going on about how disgusted he is at the word and actions of others. Clinton's disgusting. Hillary Clinton's disgusting. Bill's disgusting. Rosie O'Donnell's disgusting. All these people are disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. It's like he's blind to the reactions to his own behavior. And that's inconsistent and that's inauthentic. And, based on his various truthfulness scores, saying he's unauthentic is being kind. But here's the thing. Without Howard Stern's free speech crusade, there may have been absolutely no way to prove Trump's undeniable pattern of inappropriate comments regarding women. Because Stern didn't force Donald Trump to engage in lascivious comments about his daughter Ivanka. And the thing, if you're a Stern listener, he very rarely talks about his own daughters. Very rarely. He keeps them out of it. The Stern team didn't agree that women over 35 years old are undesirable partners. Trump said that on his own. Totally, 30 is the perfect age for a woman. After 35, it's time to cut out or something like that. No one made him say that. No one even prompted him to say that. Robin even took him to task, like she was laughing at him about the advice in his book, and he doesn't tend to write his own books, but the advice was to divorce your wife at the first sign of trouble. Just do it. And she was laughing at him for it. The other thing about Stern is he's evolved with time. He doesn't grade women's bodies the way he used to. He doesn't do a lot of that stuff. He's more mature, which is interesting because now, he's driving subscriptions to satellite radio. I've got satellite radio in my car to listen to Stern, to listen to news, and an old radio serials channel, as well as a few music channels, but there's a lot of dead space on satellite radio. We got it for Stern because we wanted to hear him. And there's been a real evolution over the years. I think his second marriage had a lot to do with that. But there's been no similar evolution of Donald Trump. We have this lengthy history. He's no more mature now than he was in the 1990s. And Stern, and his willingness to put himself and his guests out there in public, warts and all, has provided a really important benchmark for Trump's lack of growth. And I hope that the Howard Stern Show gets proper credit for the news gathering, inadvertent or not, that they did regarding this presidential election. They contributed in an important way. And hell, if Maureen Dowd can win a Pulitzer for the garbage she wrote about the whole Clinton thing, it was Yenta territory. It was just nagging ant. And then I want to give a shout out to Ken Bone. All you guys, the guy who asked the question in the red sweater that became Twitter famous, for all you guys who claim that regular guys never get noticed, Ken Bone got noticed. He is adorable. And I'm going to leave it there. There's some tangible benefits to our current news cycle. I know everybody's worn out. It's ugly. It's unpleasant. We all have one person we don't talk to anymore, at least one person, because a side came out of them we just can't unsee. But I wanted to give the good stuff to give everybody a bit of a boost because we got 30 days to go. Holy crap. But, I can still see the good in this. Star Wars. So just hang in there, everybody. Stay strong.